Welcome to the Boomer Technician. Today we're in Ohio and we're headed to our 15th car show out of 50 car shows in 50 states. We had a little rain driving to the hotel last night, and this morning it's partly cloudy. We've got the sun peeking out from time to time. But you know, the rain does tend to dissuade people from going to a car show, so hopefully we'll have some participation today. We're not at our destination yet, but we're headed up the road, and in about an hour we'll be at the show, and I'll set up the camera and capture whatever we have there to see. Well, we're here, and as predicted, the turnout is a little light, although there's a lot of diehards here. And already I've seen a couple of very interesting cars we'll get a closer look at. So far a successful day. It is a little overcast, and I saw a couple sprinkles driving in, so we may have some rain arrive and dampen the event a little bit, but so far we're good to go. Looking at the overall view of the parking lot, we can see the cars are spread out quite nicely, which is a nice change from the Atlanta show where there were so many cars on top of each other. So we should have a good opportunity to get a good look at some cars here. And we've got a broad range of years. I picked up a couple of the 30 eras hot rods here, and just kind of taking a look at the whole show. We've got one tucked out back there. And here we have a Dodge swept side pickup, which was competition for the Chevy's Cameo model. But unlike the Chevy, which had a fiberglass box in back, the Dodge has got metal fenders, and the taillights, I think, are straight off of the forward look wagons that came out in the late 50s. So sort of a unique look. And the interesting thing about this Dodge is it's parked right next to a Dodge tow truck, just like the two Dodges we saw down in Georgia. I guess they just attract each other. And here we have a early kit car from the late 50s or early 60s, and it's a very interesting look. The thing that I found most striking was that incredibly low roof line. It seems like you could hardly fit yourself into the car, but here it is. And fortunately, the owner was there, and I asked him some questions about it, and he told us what he knows.
So, well,
You said that was made by Allied Fiberglass?
I believe that was the name, yeah.
And the model name was
It's an Astra.
Astra?
Now, Kellison made the original.
Okay. Kellison I've heard
But
of.
then they bought the molds from Kellison, and she raised the roof line to give you a little more headroom. Kellison built most of his cars for free.
Well, that must have been undrivable with a lower roof than that. Crazy. All right, thanks for the info. Now, I do remember Kellison from the 70s and maybe into the 60s. They built a GT40 clone, which I think they're probably best remembered for. But let's go ahead and move on to something different, which is going to be this 73 Chevelle Coupe. And we're starting to see more of these cars at the shows, which is nice. These 70s era intermediates were smog choked, and they had the big bumpers on them. But they were nice, comfortable cars. They were big sellers for the time. Frequently, the intermediates were the best-selling cars in the market. And this one has a nice 350 Chevy engine in it. And in the interior, it's got something kind of special. Swivel buckets. I had a buddy who had a Cutlass Supreme of this vintage, and he really wished he had these kind of seats in his car. And unfortunately, it wasn't to be. So here's a very nice old AMC Rambler American wagon. This was probably a 66, and it was one of the cars that helped slow the drop in market share for AMC. They'd come down quite a bit from the 50s into the 60s, but through the middle of the 60s, these cars actually helped staunch the flow of blood and keep AMC in the game. And this was the second or third year of their updated six-cylinder, which was, of course, a very solid unit and went on to be fairly famous in the Jeep products in the 80s when they went over to a fuel-injected version. Just a nice, practical little car, much like this Pontiac Tempest Coupe, a little 326 car. Of course, a lot of the cars you see at the car shows are GTOs, but no, this is just a Tempest. Somebody's kept it well maintained, and that 326 really gives you all the power you're going to need in life. Well, before we jump back to the car show, I wanted to talk a little bit about the automotive landscape here in Ohio, and boy, there's a lot to talk about. The Jeep was essentially invented in Toledo, Ohio, and they still build them there to this day. That manufacturing stretch from Detroit to Buffalo, New York runs right along the lake through Ohio, and every one of the big three manufacturers have had plants there over the years. Down in the center of the state, in the Columbus-Marysville area, Honda has several manufacturing plants, and lots of secondary manufacturers build things in Ohio. In fact, the tire was essentially invented here, as was the airplane. Wilbur and Orville Wright built the Wright Flyer in a bicycle shop in Dayton, Ohio. So that's why the plates say birthplace of aviation. In terms of racing, I'm not thinking of a major oval course in Ohio, but there is a Mid-Ohio Race Course, which is a major SCCA venue that's pretty well known across the nation. And then up in Cleveland, the open wheel cars have, over the years, raced on a street course along the lakefront. I'm not sure that's still going, but it was certainly a track at one point and a good race to watch. In terms of oval courses, to the east you've got Pocono in Pennsylvania, to the west you've got Indy, and going up north you've got the Michigan Speedway. So if you're a big race fan, Ohio is a good place to be located. In fact, if you're an automotive enthusiast of any stripe, Ohio is a pretty good place to be. And since we're here in Ohio, let's take a look at some Ohio cars at an Ohio car show. Here we have a 65 Olds 98 in very good shape. I think this is a survivor car. I believe the owner said it had about 60,000 miles on it, and he picked it up a few years ago as is. So it's a car he likes to bring out to the shows. It would have had the Olds 425 Rocket V8 in it, and it looks like that's present and pretty much original. A buddy of mine had one of these, well, his father did back in high school, and we'd take it occasionally out to different events, and it was always nice riding in the big boat with all this nice chrome trim on the interior. Just a very nice car to own. After that, we got this Chevy Nomad, and this is a 56, and of course there's a lot of these at car shows, but this one caught my eye. I think that's the factory paint color combination, but it's a bit unusual. You don't typically see that, and the whole car is very original. Under hood, it looks just like 1956. And once again, as we move over into the interior, we've got that GM chrome sprinkled dashboard that was prevalent from the mid to late 50s all the way up into the early 70s when they went over to plastic for everything. But this one presents very nicely, as does this Triumph Spitfire. Interestingly enough, this is the little Triumph. The TR, it would have been a TR6 in these years, is the big Triumph sports car, but they also sold this very inexpensive sports car with a much smaller motor, but it was still a popular ride. Looking here at the front bumper, I'd say this is probably a 73 or a 74, judging by those rubber bumpers there. And this engine is sometimes called the tractor engine, but I think that's an unfair characterization. This is a proper sports car, a little tight in the cabin, but I had a buddy who was about my size who drove one pretty regularly, and he seemed to fit all right. So I think it's a serviceable car, even though it's the little Triumph. And here is maybe the nicest Mercury ever built, the Cougar. People who watch this channel regularly know I got a soft spot for the first generation Mercury Cougar, and I really like this one in this color. I think it's a factory paint color. I recall seeing these delivered in this color in the past, and of course the matching interior sort of reinforces that. But it's a really nice car, but it's actually overshadowed a bit by this purple one, which is a convertible and an XR7. And I talked to the owner, and part of the reason they picked it up was his daughter liked this purple color. But I wanted to kind of focus on the two Cougars, because when we look at the XR7 interior, you can see the dashboard for the XR7 is quite a bit different than the original Cougar dashboard. I'll bring up the original Cougar dashboard in the corner here, and we can kind of compare them a little bit. And you can see that the XR7's got nicer gauges, a few more switches, and that nice full wood grain glove box door that just really makes for a nice interior and sets it apart from its brother, the Mustang. And for our last car, we're going to take a look at this 75 Pontiac Ventura. It's been done up sort of GTO style, which wasn't an offering that Pontiac made in 75. Although in 74, they did have the GTO on the compact body. But we've got the bright colors and the striping like a GTO. And under the hood, we've got the big engine with the hood scoop and the opening in the hood for the shaker style hood scoop. And the rest of the car is done up kind of in the same way. It's got a relatively inexpensive interior, and it's all about a big engine and a little car. So it harks back to what Pontiac did the last few years of the GTO when they offered the Judge option. But rather than calling this a Judge, the owners decided to call it the Convict. So a little contrast with the Judge, kind of a fun play on words, and I really like it. Well, that wraps up another car show on my tour of 50 car shows in 50 states. This one was number 15, Ohio. And it's a nice little local show with some really unique cars. I hope you enjoyed seeing them. The Boomer Technician channel is one of your opportunities to see cars that don't show up on the big driving tours in Detroit and out LA and down in Atlanta. But instead, we get the local cars owned by the locals brought out for a local show. And I was happy to highlight those cars and share whatever stories I heard about them that, I remember a couple of days later. And with that, I'm back on the road heading to Indianapolis because, as always, no matter where you go, there you are.